Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Between Two Keepstars. I'm your host, Riker, and today I have a very special guest with me. One of the only FCs that I really know about, Killahbee from NC Dot.
Hello.
And besides being an FC, is there anything else you want to tell us about yourself?
Not much that I do Heath related, other than seeing really, so not much to tell.
All right, fair enough. So, a lot of stuff has happened in EVE recently. Bunch of big battles. The Triglavian event is coming to its close. New mining changes, and all that we're going to talk about. But to start off, I guess, from your perspective, Killa, how's the past 2 weeks in EVE been?
Well, I really only do 0-0 stuff and war stuff. I don't really know a lot about Triglavian or any of that other stuff, so it's also going to be a tough topic for me to talk about. I have my opinions about it, obviously, but I don't really engage in anything but 0-0 warfare. So, yeah. And the past 2 weeks were pretty. We had one big fight. We had one big fight with, a bunch of dead supers, bunch of dead dreads and stuff. Apart from that, it's been pretty quiet. We've moved most of our forces into couriers at this point, pretty much all of them actually. And we're just, grinding through couriers at the moment, getting some stuff done, killing structures, and preparing for the attack on Delph.
Has there been much resistance other than the few times the two big battles, one being NDII and 49? Has that really been the only real resistance you've seen, or has there been other fleets that have been coming out to try to stop?
There's fleets daily, but obviously, it depends a bit on targets of opportunity for them. It's very hard to fight if you're being outnumbered. You have to pick your fights very carefully, and they do, choose those opportunities whenever they see like they can take one. And 49U was one of those where they thought they could, take one of those fights. And but there's fleets daily going on. But so far, in terms of grinding for desires and grinding all that stuff in queries that they quote unquote don't really care about, not that much resistance.
Experience when fighting goons in the Imperium, I do know that they like to do a lot of harassment. Have you seen a lot of different like harassment fleets, like interceptors?
Can't mess us with what we're doing. We're really like with this stuff we're currently doing. There's not much harassment they can do. Interceptor fleets are not that effective when when the objective is killing structures in queries. Basically, killing IHUBs, they can be annoying, but when you have capital dominance, we can just use capitals to intose us, and at that point, inties won't do much either. So there's not many opportunities for them to harass us, really. So that's why I don't think there is that much.
So from what I'm getting, you would definitely say that the Queries campaign has been pretty successful so far.
Oh, it's not a Queries campaign, right? It is. It's a war, and the goal is to invade Delph eventually, and kill Delph. So that part of the war currently in Queries is going pretty well. Yes. Just like Fountain has been going pretty well. Now we moved on to Queries from my end, from the NC end. Obviously, Legacy and Test have been working on Queries and period basis for quite some more time, though they were always lacking the numerical superiority as well as cap dominance. Now that we've managed to finish up Fountain with PanFam and Co, we now moved into Queries all together. We're now staging in PTXE all together in one Keepstar or. And obviously that gives us, at least in terms of being able to flash form, we can certainly outform them in most opportunities quite easily, and that gives us a lot of opportunities to do stuff and go out and kill shit, and we won't get that much resistance. It takes some specific factors for them to be able to contest us. They've been doing pretty well in terms of numbers. I don't think their numbers are very low. and they are always very good at managing losses like the 1 in 49 too very well internally, because they do have a lot of members that believe pretty much anything that comes out of their leadership's mouth. And if you have a line membership at that rate, you have a pretty easy time taking losses like the 1 in 49 you, just so telling people, hey, it's fine. Which at the end of the day, I'm not going to disagree. Like, people always bring up ISK values and stuff like that. And in the grand scheme of things, they lost like, I don't know, 15, 16 supers or something. Whatever, like, that's not going to kill them. But it certainly sets a tone in terms of morale and momentum as well. And that's really what these wars are won and lost on anyways. Nobody loses a war in EVE these days, because they're running out of money or anything like that. Only way to lose a war or to lose your alliance or whatever is by having your members lose faith and then not showing up anymore, and then it spirals downwards from there. And I don't think goons are anywhere near that point yet. So yes, at the moment things are going well, but we have still a lot of challenges to overcome.
Now, one thing that I found kind of interesting about this whole war thing is that, so together, PanFam and Legacy seem to outnumber goons, but for the longest time, we were fighting separate. Do you think that it was sort of not really a mistake, but a bad call to sort of let us group up? Do you think it would have been better if the entirety of the Imperium would have just focused on one side to sort of almost knock them out of the war? Or do you think that them waiting so that we're all in one place was the correct move?
By who? By goons?
Yeah.
Yes, that's always been their. I don't want to call it a mistake. It's the culture that they work on, and it's been working quite well for them. They've been the most dominant force in the game for basically ever since World War B. It took them like 1 or 2 years to recover from World War B, but ever since like 2018, they've been the dominant power. Late 2017, 2018, they've been the dominant power in the game, and they've done very, very well for themselves during those 3 years. No king rules forever, as they say, and it's certainly the same thing in EVE. It's usually in cycles like this. The CFC back then, they were the king of the game, quote unquote, from like 2014 to 2016, and then World War B came, and after that, they were sort of sitting quietly in Delft, just doing their thing for 2 years, kind of recovering from World War B, and now. Then they were the most dominant force of the game again, and then now they're being, put into their place again. After that, some of the groups that are currently attacking them might be dominating the game, and then it always goes like that. There's always, people. There's like the big blocks in the game, like 3 or 4 of them, and then one of the 4 big blocks is always in power. And then at some point, 2 of the big blocks combine, or 3 of the big blocks combine. Like in this case, they beat down that one block that was the dominant one before, and then the one that was the most dominant goes to being a bit smaller for some time, and on like that, basically. It's nothing really new. I don't think they made any mistakes. Obviously, it doesn't really go well. Like, some of the things that their leadership did, where they call out people personally, or they, basically they isolate themselves from the rest of EVE. They call everybody else names, and they just kind of, unless you're in goons, you're basically an asshole. As Mitani likes to use that word a lot. It's always dangerous, but if you are in a position of power, then sometimes you can allow yourself to do that as well.
One thing that I always like to call out about, especially about the Imperium, is that you sort of have 2 different types of sort of like almost like a Twitch culture, where on Twitch you've got the Legacy guys and the like everyone's on friends in Twitch. Like everyone knows each other. Everyone likes to talk shit. Everyone likes to hang out and all of that. But then you've got the Imperium. It's almost like the Imperium is kind of just like isolated off from everyone, especially shows like the Meta Show and all that stuff. Like they're their own sort of little island. Like, hey, it's us against the world. Whereas everyone else in EVE is kind of like, it kind of feels like they're trying to cut themselves off from the greater EVE community, just from like a surface level.
Oh, well, I mean, it works. Like, that can work. You just have to be careful not to burn too many bridges, right? Like, I was often in a position where having, being allied with everybody or having friends everywhere, it can be good, but it can also be bad, right? If you just want to go solo for a while, do your thing with your alliance, you are quite limited in what you can do because you have those guys, but they have friends with those people, and then you can't really go after them for real. You can only kind of have fun with them and blah blah blah. So it's always downsides and upsides to both variations. Certainly, maybe you should do it a bit less hardcore as goons are doing it, like literally calling everybody but themselves bad things. It's just not a smart move in my opinion. And obviously burning all those bridges with everybody and always going all out. I know why he does it, because it works for his members. Obviously he knows very well how to run his show, because there's a shitload of people in his group. So it makes sense that he does the things the way he does them. But it bit him in the ass back in World War B, and it's biting him in the ass now. Just calling everybody stupid, and then you're like, oh, everybody's teaming up against us. What a big surprise. It's just what you get sometimes, but like I said, that's just the way it goes. I don't think Progod and people have been saying, the goal of this war is to kill goons for good. And I think that's the thing, you can't, it's very, very hard to kill really old alliances like NC or goons or, Test even, because they have a very strong core and it would take a lot. I think it's definitely going to be possible to shrink them down in size a lot. And I think that's personally like where I would see this war accomplished. It's not if goons disband, because I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's very much accomplished if we manage to put them down to a size where they are not really a threat anymore. And then obviously that's just going to last for so long. They're going to rebuild. They're going to become a threat again. Just the way the game goes, right? Like it's very rarely that you see alliances disband over losing a war. Like that's why GTG and Darkness disbanding was actually a big deal at the start of this year, because that was actually like that was one of the alliances in a long time, one of the bigger alliances that actually disbanded because of the way the war went, that they lost basically.
Well, I think it's interesting that you brought up that nobody actually thinks that, like, nobody's actually thinks to themselves, okay, we're going to completely destroy goons. They're not going to be a thing anymore.
Well, there's people that think that, but I'm not one of them. Like, there's certainly people that think that's going to be possible, and there's certainly people that think that's the goal of this war, and that's fine. If they think that's the goal of this war, that can be their goal. But I think it's not a goal that's very accomplishable. And I think trying to commit to a goal like that is not very smart in the long run. Yeah.
And I totally agree too, because I mean, one of the things that goons keep bringing up is that they really think that just because we lose all our space means that we're not going to stop hanging out. Like, that is still a very valid point. And sort of pivoting off of that, one of the things that Billy did say in the very beginning of the war was, I don't know, it might have been Progod, but one of the things that was stated was, we're going to wipe goons out from the game. Now, looking back at that, that was probably rhetoric. But when you look at that, like, that's basically what the entire goon propaganda strategy is banking off of rhetoric to say that, hey, listen, these guys are out to destroy us. These guys are basically Bob 2.0. We need to fight these guys. And what's interesting too is that whenever our propaganda goes and basically uses their own rhetoric against them, their defense is, well, you guys are just saying all this stuff based off of rhetoric and stuff that they didn't actually mean. So it's kind of like, it's almost like a double standard. Like, we're taking them at face value, even though it's rhetoric, but they're doing the exact same to us. But when we do it to them, it doesn't count. I don't know if that made sense.
I personally don't read really get all that much into it. I don't really care what people say. Like, all that really matters is what you like. It only matters because it's what they're telling their members. And at the end of the day, I don't think I could run Test better than Vili Progador. And I don't think I could be running goons better than Mitani does, and I think they know how to run their alliances best. And if the rhetoric is what's needed to run their show over there, then that's fine. I don't know. We don't really have to do that with NC. Most of the members in NC, they just hate goons, or they don't like goons for historic purposes. It's mostly a tradition at this point. There's certainly a lot of people in NC that just joined NC because they know that NC is always going to be fighting goons. And for some of those people, it's very personal. And like I said, it's mostly like a tradition at this point. It's not like even Vince can be reasoned with when it comes to goons, and he's one of the older, obviously one of the oldest people that are still playing this game, that is still involved from like way back when as well. And that's fine. That's just not me. I don't care. I don't mind goons personally. I have nothing against any of the goon leadership people in person. I just do my job, which is, I am an NC dot and I'm running fleets for NC dot, so I fight goons. But I could just as well be fighting test or PL or whatever. It's really nothing personal for me. I don't have any agendas. I just fight who I want to fight, basically. And right now it's goons.
So basically, for you, it's more about the content. Is kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, no, not necessarily. Most of the content in a war like this is pretty garbage. It's just about winning, really.
Definitely valid. So next thing that I wanted to go to is what is it? Oh, is the fights, because big fights happened. The 49 TAC fight, in which over 1 trillion ISK was lost. It was, I think, the last time I looked at the battle report, it was almost 2-1. You had 770 bill lost on the Imperium side, and I think like 310 lost on the PAPI side.
Yep, we did very well in that fight.
So, I guess, what are your thoughts on that fight? Like, besides we did very well.
I mean, I wasn't there. Obviously, it was in USTZ. I'm a German, so I wasn't really awake during that. I just was sound asleep. But it was from they made some mistakes which I didn't think they would make. They dropped super carriers onto dreads. I think we dropped a quite small amount of dreads onto their faxes initially on the Fortizar, and apparently they felt pretty confident because we dropped them on the fort. They felt so confident with the advantage of the dreads being on the Fortizar that they felt confident enough to drop those supers pretty close to the dreads actually, which was also a big mistake in my opinion. And then we obviously just dropped more dreads on those supers, and we dropped some of our own supers at range, and we just went to town on those super carriers. Dreads are incredibly powerful these days, and yeah, I mean we killed 2 supers at a time. I think the total was like we lost like 70, 80 dreads, and we killed like 14, 15 supers. It's a pretty good ratio, and that was involving heavy tie-dye. As far as I'm aware, the note wasn't even reinforced, although I'm not positive on that. So there was certainly some more potential there if note was reinforced and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a pretty well executed fight by our bros, and yeah, not that much to it. I don't think it was of any strategic importance. 49U was basically lost some time ago. I'm not entirely sure why they decided to fight over the fort. There was a lot of herfing going on prior to that fight. Like there was a lot of Mitani calling out Progod and pings, and Progod calling out them and pings, and blah blah blah. So maybe the tensions were just high, and people just wanted to go for a fight to put their words, to put their money where their mouths were, basically. That's certainly possible, but in terms of strategic value, that 49U Fortizar was really not that relevant. But like I said, it was more about the morale, and that was certainly a fight that gave us a lot of morale and momentum, I think, because we dominated them in the first bigger capital escalation of this war, and that's always good.
Do you think there's anything they could have done better, like done differently?
Yeah,
to defend the fort?
close to the dreads. That made no sense. They could have dropped their supers at range. Also, I'm not a fan of just dropping super carriers and being conservative about it. I think if you drop everything, or you don't drop at all. But that I wasn't there, so I wasn't familiar with all the specifics of the situation when the drop happened. So I don't know what the situation was, why the Goon FCs decided to drop the way they did. But it was certainly some poor decisions there. But I'm certain that they learn from those mistakes and they just do it differently next time.
Right. So you're more of a there's no point to trickle in forces because those forces can easily just get chewed up. Instead, you just got to
Yeah,
go
I
on.
mean, trickling is always bad, especially with dreads. That wasn't the case there, but I don't really understand the point of just dropping super carry. If you want to delete dreads as fast as possible, yeah, super carries are a great tool for that. They do insane damage, but I don't know. I feel like their drop was too conservative. If you want to drop, they could have dropped dreads on their own. They didn't. Not majority of them, anyways, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a bit weird. Not sure. But again, there could have been legitimate decisions there. I wasn't there. I don't know what exactly happened on their end as well. There is certainly scenarios where what they did was the right call. I just, after the fact, and it's always easy to say, but after the fact, looking at this fight, it certainly wasn't the right call.
Well, and even too, like if they would have just dropped just a bunch more dreads, like compared to super carriers, dreads are more easily replaced, especially with the insurance.
Depends on the numbers. Like, yeah, the insurance, that's the thing. Like, that's not the issue anymore. ISK isn't an issue. Insurance money is only ISK. The problem is the minerals. And yeah, that's questionable. Like, is it really easier to replace? Because if that would have been a dread versus dread only brawl, probably a couple hundred dreads would have died on both sides. And I don't think it's easier to replace 200, 300 dreads than it is to replace 15 supers. It's very likely that they had the 15 supers just laying around, having had so many years of resources and everything. You build up a certain cache of super caps titans as well. You usually have a couple, at least a couple dozen supers laying around, maybe a bunch of titans just ready to replace them immediately. You don't really normally anyways have like a couple hundred dreads laying around, maybe a couple hundred, but not 500, 600 or whatever. So I think replacing 16 supers is probably easier than replacing 200, 300 dreads. But yeah, that's really something that only goons know that the answer to that, because I don't know what kind of cash they have available or whatever.
All right.
I think for us it would certainly be easier.
Yeah, definitely, especially with like the various infrastructure we have already built up in Quirius. One thing that I actually thought was interesting was, and I actually want to get your opinion on this, was the dropping of new Keepstars by the Imperium in Delve. Do you think that was a good call, bad call?
I mean, I don't think it does. I don't think it matters at all. Like the problem or the major flaw that apparently they have in their thinking is that the strategy they're banking on at the moment, the reason they are okay losing Querius and they are okay losing everything is because they are convinced that there's going to be a point where we have no chance but to fight them on one of their Keepstars. That's what they're preparing for. That's what they want to have their showdown on, is one huge battle where they have the advantage of being able to just sit on a Keepstar defensively. And that's why, when that's your goal, dropping more Keepstars probably makes sense. But I don't know. I feel like I don't think we necessarily need to take a fight like that. We may, and I think it's likely that a fight like that will happen at some point during this still, but yeah, I don't think it's worth being letting everything around those Keepstars die and then being like, yeah, but well, we can just have this big defensive fight on this Keepstar. That Keepstar isn't worth anything if everything around is dead. No IHUBs, nothing. You can't you can't live in this space because we're sitting right on top of it. What are they going to do with their Keepstar? They're just going to sit in their Keepstar. Their members can't do anything. They can't go out to rat. They can't go out to mine. They basically can't leave that Keepstar. That's not worth anything. We can just camp them into that Keepstar. Obviously, you can't actually camp a Keepstar, but you can just, every time they undock a fleet and go somewhere, try to do something. We do too. We fuck them up. And, at that point, I don't know that's what I do anyways. I would just kill everything around 1DQ, and even 1DQ itself. You can just kill everything besides those Keepstars, and then whatever.
And It definitely seems like that's the plan. One of the things I thought was interesting was that the Imperium strategy seems to think, okay, if we can bide our time as a defensive force more and more, we'll have the advantage. When in actuality, with with our interdicting and our constantly of hunting ratters, miners in Delve, wouldn't allowing the war to drag on longer make things worse for them?
Not necessarily. One of their main strategies, one of the main goals in this war is to split us internally, which is not a completely invalid strategy because, a lot of the alliances involved in PAPI are not necessarily friends with each other or haven't worked together in a long time or, have grudges that they're just putting aside because for the greater good, quote unquote. So I think trying to drag this out as long as possible makes sense, especially if they can deny us a lot of content. Our numbers will go down. It's just a fact. It's just the way the game works. And if they can, they can basically just try to turtle up and survive as long as they can and hope that we sort of splinter internally. I don't think that's a completely invalid strategy. If it's going to work or not, we'll see. But I don't think they have much of a choice. Like there's no way they could take us the current values. We just have more for everything than they do. So yeah.
One thing they have seen, especially from them, is an initiative in the smaller groups is going out and attacking other people's space. Do you think that that's sort of counterattacking of us in our own space? Like, let's say they go and counterattack drones, or they really start to hit esoteria around those regions. Do you think that that would help to sort of drive us away from the front?
I don't know what it would do to legacy or test, but I know that when we deployed to this war, Vince said we're willing to basically let drones burn besides our state and Keepstar, our central Keepstar in NSI. Apart from that, we don't really care about drones that much. And it makes sense because that's just what Init rolls on, right? Like Init's not a good alliance to sit in 1DQ and defensively do stuff. It doesn't really fly well with their members. Most of the Init line members, they're basically people who want to be part of Goons, but they're too cool. Like they don't want to be part of Imperium, but they don't want to be in Goons because it's not a cool thing to be in Goons, so they join Init. And Init being that cool alliance, they don't take orders. They are very independent and they go out and attack stuff, and I don't know. Whatever. Like, fine. It makes sense, I guess, for Init as an alliance to do that, but I don't think it's gonna have an effect on this war. At least not on PanFam. I'm not sure how Legacy or Test would respond to a serious attack on its area.
So what I do know that happened was that when Matani made a speech about, Brave is next, and it went and actually started attacking Brave, and that blew up in their face because, from what I gathered, Brave completely just wiped the floor with them. Like, it was bad.
Well, but in the long run, if Init really wants to go for it, I don't think Brave can fight Init. Personally, I don't think they can. Not on their own, anyways. Yeah, we'll see.
So one of the things also that Init did was they actually went and retook Fountain and started sort of rebuilding up there. Do you think that's going to have any bearing on this war whatsoever? Do you think that that was
that's just a weird move. Like that's a move I never got from the beginning because when we were kicking them out of Fountain, they were like, "Oh, we're so happy we're not bound to solve anymore. We don't actually care about Fountain that much." Blah blah. Now they're like, "Oh, we are reversing their progress. We're going back into Fountain. They didn't actually do anything." And it's obviously complete bullshit. I don't know why they're even trying to go with that narrative. It makes no sense. They can't retake Fountain because value of burning a region down is resetting all the strat indexes, killing all the keepstars. Unless they redeploy all those keepstars, unless they get all their iHubs up back to level 4 or whatever, and get jump bridges and all that, they haven't retaken Fountain. They're just sitting there pretending like they, reversing our progress. It's meaningless. And unless Goons are planning to evac into Fountain after this, it really doesn't matter anyways. If they are not in Delve helping Goons defend Delve, then it just makes the job easier for us. We're done with Fountain. We're just eyes on Delve now. Fountain doesn't matter anymore.
Well, and that's actually what I thought was interesting too, that they would make this sort of move because one of the biggest things that goons have said is that, oh well, we lost, those Keepstars, all that stuff. We lost 4.2 trill, but that stuff didn't matter. But now you're going back and putting all that stuff down. Like it was one thing if they just said, okay, we're not going to replace it, so that was lost money anyway. But now it's almost like they're going back and replacing it, which just
they aren't though. Like all they've not dropped a single significant structure so far. Like all they've dropped is a bunch of moon mining stuff, a Sotio or some shit, but it's really not significant at all. Unless they drop a Keepstar, it doesn't really matter.
And I'm guessing you don't think that they're gonna continue and drop more stuff, or
Yeah, I mean they may, and we'll see what we do if they do. If they drop a Keepstar, we'll see if we will do anything about it. But again, I don't think it matters. Like even if they redeploy Keepstars and sit in Fountain again, whatever. Like then if they're not in Delve, then goons are fucked. Like that's the TLDR. Because without in it, they have even less numbers, and then we just roll over Delve, and then them sitting in Fountain is completely inconsequential.
right? And one thing that I actually wanted to ask previous was the whole goons trying to drive a wedge between the alliances. From your view as an FC, and I don't know if you can say any of this, but like, have there been any sort of cracks at all, or any sort of things that sort of worry you with the coherency of both PanFam and Test, or are we basically stronger than ever?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, obviously having a lot of big egos like Willy, Progod, me, Vince, Headliner, all in a room, Goblins, having that many big egos in one room was always going to result in some clashes, and you have fights every now and then. That's just the way it goes, though. It's not avoidable in a coalition like this where you have so many people, who are used to just calling the shots, and now suddenly you want to coordinate, and you can't just call a shot anymore. You have to ask, or you have to talk to other people, and kind of figure out if that's in the interest of the coalition. It's always a bit weird for those people, but at the end, there hasn't been any major sort of no cracks whatsoever, anyways. But like obviously there's been some slaps. Some people calling each other retarded, but at least on our that's pretty standard. That's nothing to worry about at all. It's been happening in PanFam for years. It's quite what our culture is at this point, probably. So no, I'm not very worried at the moment. Working with Test and Legacy has been pretty smooth. I haven't actually been involved that much in the last couple of weeks, but from what I'm reading and stuff, we have been doing pretty well internally.
That's actually great to hear. There was one thing though that I actually said last show, and I'm gonna kind of divert on a tangent a little bit. But last week I talked about how the 4.2 trill that Imperium lost in Fountain wasn't a big deal because the TTT. I actually went and asked Villy how much the TTT makes, and if 4.2 trill can easily be replaced by the TTT. Turns out that is totally false. The TTT doesn't make anywhere near that amount for the alliances involved. So I just wanted to go back and say, hey, that thing I said on the last show, totally wrong.
So first of all, again, looking at money doesn't matter. Nobody's going to run broke over this shit, right? Like none of the alliances involved are going to be broke and stop winning the war or fighting the war at some point. So money value loss doesn't matter to begin with. And it depends on what kind of time frame obviously you're looking at. TTT doesn't make bad money, but yeah, it's not going to replace 4.2 trillion in a month or two. That's not that kind of money involved there. But yeah, it's again, money doesn't. It's a metric, right? Like again, I keep saying this on TIS and whatever. But like the reason I look at battle reports is to know if I won or lost, quote unquote, and then also to decide how much I've won or lost. For me, it's like a scoring board, not because I think, oh, I've inflicted so much damage to them, they're not going to recover from this. Unless 100 Titans die, it's not significant, right? And it's really just a matter of how much did I win by. If I killed 70 billion worth of ships and my enemy only killed 35 billion worth of stuff, then I killed twice as much as he did. So I won, twice as much, quote unquote. And yeah. That's what I use Zekiel for, and that's what I think people should use Zekiel for. Because again, none of the fights we've had so far, none of the campaign progress that has happened so far, has done enough monetary damage to anyone that it would be any kind of threat. All the big blocks involved are basically infinitely rich at this point, so
And
money is not a factor in Eve anymore.
And that seems to reinforce your point of this war is not really going to be won by money. It's going to be won when the enemy stops logging in, essentially.
Yeah, which is why the whole narrative of, that's one of the things that they've been spinning since the beginning of like, oh, they don't have the casino money this time around. The casino money in World War B was a catalyst. It was like it got the reason people started working together was the money, because there was people involved working together that wouldn't be working together under any other circumstance. And that's why the money worked, and the money was important because it got people to work together. It got people in a room. But once the ball started rolling, the money was nice as a side benefit. It was nice, not you just whatever. Like you could whelp anything. You would just send a bill to the casino, they would replace it. But it wasn't necessary for us to fight the war. Money has not been an issue for a long, long time. At least for the big blocks. Obviously, I know that there are smaller alliances out there that have a different opinion about this, but yeah.
So one of the things I actually kind of want to ask now is if you were in the Imperium shoes, just based off of what you know now, I guess what would you do if you were like in command of the Imperium force?
I would have done what we did when they came out. Like we were in their shoes. We were in their shoes in Tribute in 2018 when they came to Glass Tribute and Vale, and they kicked us out of the North, and we just timed everything for the worst possible time zone. Took a couple of fights where we could, and then left. And while that's a very unspectacular way of doing things, and while that's some people may call it a coward's way out or whatever. In my opinion, it's a smart way, because in the current Eve meta, at the end of the day, it all comes down to numbers. And if your opponent outnumbers you, you're going to lose. It's just a matter of time. And at the moment, they have one big advantage that we didn't have in Tribute. They have a capital force that we still have to respect, because while I think we do outnumber them in super caps and stuff, they have quite a lot of numbers available to themselves as well. I don't think we're going to outnumber them super significantly, so we can't just throw around our supers like they're candy. That was different when they came after us in Tribute and Vale. They had such a huge capital dominance that it was completely out of the question for us to take any kind of capital fight, basically. So that's why they could just roll over the whole thing a lot quicker than we are rolling over them now. But we took a couple of fights back when they kicked us out of the North on a sub-cap level, and some of those fights we dominated pretty hard, and those were the fun fights to take. And then when we realized, okay, there's no more good fights for us to take here, we just left. We packed everything up. We timed everything for 0800 and left. And while that sucks, that's just the way the game works at the moment. And yeah, I mean, that's maybe I don't know. Hard to say, because they do have a bit better odds than we did back then. So maybe I wouldn't just pack up and leave entirely, but I would put myself in a position where I could, go sort of take fights that I like to take, where I know, I have the upper hand. Certain opportunities, I just go in, kill as much shit as I can, and then once the attacker gets their shit together, I just leave and let them grind all the shit, and then look for more opportunities to get kills or find a new place to go.
Ready? Where do you think? I guess where do you think goons would go if they did that plan?
No idea. I mean, they could go where that I can't say that. I have no idea what they want to do, or with the new mining changes and stuff coming, Losec might be a good place to live in, or maybe they go somewhere else. There's a lot of space empty in this game at the moment. They can basically pick and choose any of the regions they would want to go to, provided we don't follow them and keep, sitting on them, which is likely what we're going to do this time around anyway. So it doesn't really matter where they go.
All right, that's fair. And that you actually just remind me, that brings us to the mining changes. When looking at this, I personally think that these mining changes really won't affect the war, because as everyone knows, like, we have these massive stockpiles of minerals that we still haven't burned through. Um, I'm kind of I'm kind of interested to hear your opinion. Do you think that these mining changes coming will affect the war in any way, or
We were in mine, like nobody has been mining since the last mining changes. Anyways, the last mining changes were the ones that were going to affect this war, if any. These ones don't change. Like nobody was really mining in 0-0 anymore. Anyways, now you know you just mine in 0-0 for those couple minerals, and then to me these changes don't really matter at all. Like I don't care. I'm not an industrialist. I know our industrialists, they have a different opinion about them, but whatever. They're going to figure it out. They always do. And it'll probably just end up, we're just going to end up having miners all over the place if we need them. Otherwise, we're just going to buy the ore from the market. And that's that.
alrighty? I share that same opinion. So one of the other interesting changes that came out was the Rolling Thunder game update, which upped the damage of all the Eden Com ships, which I personally don't think they'll be used either way, and also gave, I believe it was a Tech 2 tank bonus to Blops. With that Tech 2 bonus, do you foresee more Blops fleets being used against?
No. Blobs fleets aren't a thing. Not in a war, anyways. They're for like small scale hunting, fishing, or whatever, but it's not what I do, and Blobs fleets aren't viable at all. So, no. Same for the Eden Com ships could be interesting. We did stock up on them quite early because it was super cheap because nobody used them. I'm not sure if these changes are enough for them to become significant. There's way too many counters the way the weapons work. Like literally, all you have to do versus an Eden Com fleet, you just get on top of them and drop drones, and they're done. Like it's so easy to counter them. It's I don't know. We'll see if they become strong or not. At the moment, I don't think they will, but that may change. And blobs are a joke. As sad as that is to say, but that's just what it is.
And I can definitely say that Blops fleets would have actually been super fun, but yeah, no, they are pretty much a joke right now.
They are fun. They are fun. Like the thing is, it doesn't matter in the war. Like in a war, blobs fleets aren't a thing. You can drop on raiders every now and then. Yeah, cool. But if your blobs is tanking something, you're already doing it wrong. Like blobs are not designed to tank anything. So getting a T2 tank bonus does nothing. Blobs aren't designed to tank anything. That's not what they're good for. You jump on something, you kill it, you gang stuff. You're not supposed to tank anything. So I like that. Just doesn't make any sense.
Do you think there could have been another bonus that helped their ability?
Yeah, I mean there could be a lot of cool stuff they could give these ships, but obviously they're not going to do that because it would take actual dev time and not just changing some numbers. I would like to blobs to be able to have like a some kind of like a Marauder has a bastion module, maybe give the blobs like a Sino inhib module that sort of jams Sinos being lit around it, shit like that. That's what blobs would be cool if they would actually be useful, if they could deploy like a 100-kilometer Sino inhib field or something like that, but they're completely immovable and or anything like that, or maybe lights maybe some sort of pick point bubble or some shit like that. There's so many cool things they could do with blobs to actually make them meaningful, but that would take them to actually put something new into the game and develop that, and that's not very likely to happen anytime soon.
Alrighty. Yeah, I actually didn't even think about the whole idea of giving Blops a weighted Sino-gem like that. I honestly think that'd be pretty cool. Like, definitely. So I think that was pretty much the last thing. Oh, Wackabot. So for those who for those who missed it, recently there was a Wackabot event, which it basically went to where people who were botting were teleported into Uli and you killed them. For me, it was the first Titan I've ever killed, so I'm pretty happy about that. But holy crap, the tie-dye was so bad. that it just made the game unfun. Granted, there weren't any disconnects, but it was essentially, the only way to describe it was a bit of a fustercluck, because here you had a bunch of random people in the system with no organization and CCP teleporting Titans 100 off. Like, granted, halfway through the event, they started teleporting them to where people could shoot them and not have to slow boat, because slow boating in tie-dye with that many people that are neutral showing on your screen just makes things so much more difficult. And while I'm glad I did it once, that is the only time I will do it, because I don't want to have to deal with just that clusterfuck of an overlay.
Yep. I mean, events like that are cool for like all the high sec puppies that want to get a Titan kill, because they don't really have the chance to get those otherwise. But yeah, I mean, whatever. I think it's cool. The fight against bots is obviously very important, and it's a nice event to sort of showcase that they're doing something. But yeah, I mean, the fight against botting is like the fight against, I don't know, terrorism. It's like chasing ghosts. You're never going to be able to get rid of the bots in the game. That's not to say that they shouldn't try to get rid of them. Like, just letting the bots go wild would be bad too. So I think that they're certainly the right call to sort of go after them, and killing them publicly is always kind of a cool event, especially for, like I said, all the people that don't really get the opportunity to kill those kind of ships otherwise. So I think it makes sense. It's a cool thing for those people, and it keeps players in the game. It gets people maybe interested to go to 0-0, because killing a Titan was so awesome, they want to do it again. Then they decide to go to a 0-0 alliance, and that's fine. I'm very neutral about the whole event. I don't care about it either way. I think it's not bad. It's not like, I wouldn't describe it as something super great either. I think it's just whatever. Like, okay, yeah. Don't personally care all that much about it.
Right, and I'm definitely in support of going after bots. It's just one of the
Yeah, it's just
difficult.
It's fine to go after them. It's just they have to understand that they're never like, you can banning a bot unless they banned. Botting is so worth it in EVE that unless you ban them super early, they're always going to be paid for. Like, just it doesn't take that long at all to make a account sort of work, sort of how do you say it in English? Don't know the word, but yeah, pay for itself basically, right? So yeah, unless they ban the botter within the first like month of the bot starting to bot, I don't think people are just going to remake a new account basically.
Right, and one of the things
It's already worth it.
that makes things even harder about EVE is that it's so easy to AFK.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, EVE is a game where botting is incredibly rewarding, and where botting is worth so much, because if you can just AFK bot like 40 gilas or whatever and run nullsec anoms 24/7, then you make insane money. And then even if they ban all of your accounts after 2 or 3 weeks, at that point you will have already made so much money that you can just create another 20 accounts, and you're still positive on it in terms of money. And yeah, there's not that much they can do about it, but we'll see. I like, again, I don't think they should stop trying to go after bots. That would be crazy. They should certainly continue going after them. I just think it's they're never going to be able to sort of get rid of botting altogether, but they can certainly keep it at bay. I think that's what the goal should be.
Oh yeah, and again, probably one of the hardest things about like trying to find bots is trying to determine, okay, is this like an actual bot or is this just an AFK player? Because like you hear people, like in my own alliance, people talk about, it's like, yeah, no, I've got three Ishtar alts ratting like 8 hours a day while I'm playing. Like, that's fairly easy to do. All you need to do is once every 30 minutes warp it to a new site. That's not hard at all.
Yep.
which actually I think is kind of interesting because one of the things that goons have actually really pushed is this. And I don't want to say it's just goons, but I initially heard it from goons, and I still continue to hear it from goons. Other than I also hear it from Rich Richmond, one of the wormhole guys, is the overabundance of botting in OASA and the amount of bots that fraternity are running. Well, one of the things that actually happened, and I believe it was on Talking in Stations, was Norris, the leader of fraternity, came on and actually talked about the whole botting thing and the whole fraternity being accused of being this massive botting alliance. And he really took the time to drive home the point of, in fraternity, they take botting very, very seriously. And they will almost do their own investigations into like, okay, is this guy botting? He is. All right, boot him out of the alliance. Like they don't take that.
Yeah,
They do not
what people underestimate, especially in alliances like NC and Goons, is that because in NC and Goons we have a lot of better vets from way back in the day, and most of those people do the minimal amount of work that they need to do to be able to pay their accounts, and to be able to sustain their PvP activities like buying ships and all that stuff. So obviously when they see numbers like 10 trillion is granted in OASA, that's nutty, and you obviously conclude that there's a lot of bots there, and I think there is a bunch of bots there. Obviously every alliance has bots. It's just the way it is. But they have a lot of people. Like that's something that people keep underestimating. It's like FRT has a shit ton of people, and unlike most of the people in Goons and NC, those aren't all bitter vets. Those are people that actually still want to play the game. They want to log in and they want to play the game for 10 hours, 12 hours a day. And if you have 1,000 people that actually want to play the game that actively and want to log in for hours and hours on end every single day and do nothing but red because that's what they enjoy doing, and they feel like that's what they want to do, and that gets you insane numbers. So yes, there's obviously bots involved in that number, but again, in Goon's numbers, there was bots involved as well. Every single month of the MER being out and them being so proud of those numbers, bots were involved in that. It's kind of funny. Nobody was shooting. Like that's why I always think it's kind of hilarious because goons are so bad at this. Like they don't ever care. Like that was literally their only reason of existence during the entirety of like 2016, 2017 after World War B, when they were not that strong of a military force again, but they were just herfing the MER every once to be like, oh, look at all those mining numbers in Delph and look at all those rating numbers in Delph. And they were so proud of it. And now that they're being beaten on that, suddenly it's all bots, right? And suddenly it's all like, and when it was them, it was obviously all legit. And that's why it's so bad. Like, come on, guys. When it was you, bots were involved. Now that it's FRT, yeah, bots are involved as well. But it's also just a lot of people actually playing the game, and that's, I don't know. It's just narrative stuff. It's fine.
And to your point, like when I was super active in this game right after college and I was still looking for a job, granted, I probably should have spent more time looking for a job, but that's neither here nor there. Like I mined like 8 hours a day on a Rourke. And then when I got a second Rourke, I basically doubled my income to where I was making 2 billion ISK a day. But that wasn't me running a bot. That was me sitting at my computer watching two Rourke wolves on rocks just shoot rocks for 8 hours. That was all
Yep.
legit. So
Yep. Exactly.
The idea of someone actually playing for 8 hours, yeah, I can totally see that because I myself have done it.
Yeah, a lot of people have lost touch with that. A lot of people, because they've been playing the game for so long, they only log in for a couple of hours a week. They go on 2 or 3 fleets a week that maybe take like 2 hours each, and then they maybe log in for like 2 or 3 hours for ratting, and that's really all you need to do if you know how to rat. And but they can't really understand that there's still people out there that actually want to play Eve for like 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, whatever. And if you do that, if you spend those 10 hours efficiently, then you make a load of money. And that's why I think it's it's just the way it is. Like it's whatever.
Well, even too, like there's this one guy who regularly streams Hateless. Like everyone thinks that it's this sort of common conception, or that everyone thinks that okay, you really can't make much money on high sec. But then you've got people like Hateless who will go out and make billions of ISK in a few hours. But then when you look at it, it's because he's running 5 accounts, running Triglavian sites, and just picking up all the loot. Like, he makes bank. He's actually probably richer than quite a few nullsec pilots. But it's because, like you said, he plays the game and legitimately enjoys doing missions. He enjoys coming up with these really weird fits and just throwing away ships. At the same time, though, he doesn't really lose ships, so that probably contributes to him having so much money. And with that, I guess, is there any topics that you wanted to touch on?
No, not really. I mean, we talked about most of the stuff that happened recently. Again, I wasn't actually playing that actively in the last couple of weeks, last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because I was just busy with other stuff. And also, this part of the war currently, where we're just grinding structures, I think is not necessarily a phase of the war where I need to be super active. And there's a lot of room for other FCs to get fleets out, get their name, get their name up basically, and in an alliance like NC, it's quite kind of important that you just run a bunch of fleets so people get to know you, so you can actually pull numbers when it's important. I think this current phase is very important for that. So I've been sort of chilling in the background and watching other people get the stuff done. And then I think once Aquarius is finished up and we're starting to move on to Delph, I think it's gonna be my time to use some fleets again as well. And yep, that's pretty much all that's happened, at least in my opinion. Anyways, again, some of the high six stuff, blah, 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 I don't really care about. I don't really follow any other Triglavian stuff either, because I just don't care. But yeah, that's it.
Well, and
It actually lines up very nicely in terms of time, because I have another meeting in like a minute. So,
well, yeah. So I guess there was one last thing I wanted to say. Oh,
yep.
It was about the FCs thing. One, that's totally correct. The amount of FCs and people that are starting to FC that I've seen in Horde that I've never seen before is skyrocketing. Like, I know one FC, Siler Conway from my corp actually just started doing blobs, and he had never FC'd before. I've started stepping into more military dirt roles to help out with my corp and yada yada. So the fact that these sort of pre-phases of the war are really giving newer FCs and newer people the chance to really sort of test the water is 100% true. And I personally think that having that larger talent pool is really going to help us once we go to Delph.
Yep, I agree.
And with that, I think it's a good stopping point. I just want to, before we go, I want to thank Killa. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. See you around.
Thank you again, and have a good one. And this has been Between Two Keepstars. I don't want to say something that someone else said, so I'm just going to leave y'all with have a good one. Anyway, bye guys. See you next week.